Hello and welcome to this interesting conversation of Banking Frontiers on the topic of innovation for Insta turnaround time. May I request you all to introduce yourself from the panel. I would like to first call upon Sandeep Ranjan to introduce himself.
Thank you, Babu. I'm Sandeep Ranjan. I'm the Chief Digital Officer at Shriram Housing Finance. I've joined Shriram Housing Finance recently, but I've been part of the banking and NBFC industry, primarily looking into transformation, payments, innovation, and implementation of newer technologies for the last 15 out of 17 years that I've been there.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sandeep Saran. I work with HDFC Securities as head of digital innovations and L&D. Prior to this, I used to work with the ICICI Bank, pretty much on the retail side. Getting into digital was due to my stint in HDFC Securities. I used to take care of marketing, and it was largely digital with us, and now taking care of digital innovations.
Hi, Balaji Rajagopalan. I'm working in ICICI Bank. I've been in the bank for 7 years. Prior to bank, I was in various IT companies, various MNCs, IT companies, part of various banking transformation programs. From 2000, I've been predominantly to BFSI, so I'm a techno-functional person. Last 7 years in ICICI Bank, I've worked in various assets and liabilities, complete portfolio in terms of the various applications, including treasury, corporate center, complete finance. And especially related to this current topic, I also head the intelligent automation for the bank.
Good evening. I have been a CTO, CISO for InsurTech companies for about 18 years. And before that, I have been, CISO in capital markets in Unit Trust of India, and as well as in UTA Securities. So that's my background.
Fantastic. And currently?
Currently, I am CTO of OCare Group, which is into FinTech, InsurTech, and HealthTech.
Wonderful.
So hi, this is Prashant here. I'm the Vice President for DevSecOps with Datamato. I also take care of the banking clients which are there with Datamato. And my major role is to see to that, when it comes to infrastructure automation, we are able to help the banks do the digital transformation through infrastructure automation. So we have done a lot of innovations in that space. And that is my role here to handle the banking clients. Thank you.
So friends, to start with, we have all been innovating, most of the organizations, because it is imperative that you have to innovate. While at the POC stage and innovation looks very lucrative, once you start scaling up during the production or actual production stage, you really start facing the challenges. Now, when each one of you is getting into this stage, what are the kind of challenges that a technology product is put to when you put a technology product into production? So, and with an objective that you want to make it scalable. So I would like to understand from each one of you, at least 2 or 3 of you, how you have been facing these challenges. Maybe we can start with Balaji. Balaji, since you have been in this space, you will be in a best position to share some first cut thoughts.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. So fundamentally, when we talk about automation starts from onboarding of a customer to various offers, services, and including the interactions of customers in terms of various offerings and various channels. So when it comes to automation, there are multiple things. When we talk about the POC and the production part, it is important to understand the real-time production equivalent data sets. For example, what you plan for the UAT, it is important the people who are involved in the product unit testing to understand the real-time production data. People should not have some artificial hypothetical test scenarios, case data. When it comes to onboarding, people should consider the actual set of data from a customer point of view. Similarly, when it comes to transactions, people should consider the real data. That is one point. Number 2 is on the performance. Extremely important that people have to be cautious about the performance in terms of scalability. People will test for a few transactions, but when it comes to volume, any organization which has large volume of transactions, The scalability is another second factor. Third thing is on the end user experience. End user experience is extremely important. Automation is not about connecting the dots of existing applications. Systems are evolved over a period of time. It's all about reimagining, making sure that systems are designed from a customer-centric point of view rather than legacy-oriented systems. So these are the basic things which I would like to put in as such. There are a lot more, but I thought these three things would be important from a.
Excellent. Thanks,
Can I
Balaji,
come
for
in
that
here?
quick one.
Just wanted to start with this later part of your question. Adoption, scalable adoption. I've tried not to fight adoption because that's a steep fight as it is. So I've looked at replacing the existing processes, how to best automate them and make the lives easier and better. And obviously, the new processes have to be scalable. Right. Today we are doing X number of transactions. How we can handle more than X. That has been my primary focal point when I'm looking for new technology adoption. So this is I wanted to say that I have picked up projects which are replaceable with automation and value add to the organization straight away.
Interesting. That's a very good perspective, and I'm sure a lot of compliance, a lot of other things are also required when you actually scale up the organization. Any other perspective, Sandeep Ranjan?
Adding to what Balaji said, in my view, essentially, any project not converting from POC to actual adoption by the stakeholders, it has got two elements to it. One is technology, and the second is the internal customers, which are your stakeholders. The problem is that while we solve for all the technology problems, because essentially what you will get only a few limited set of problems on the technology front, because these days we do take care of solving for all the problems that we foresee while the development process itself, except for a factor which is a POC is always done in a control environment. The real life happens in a real environment. The factors may be different. Otherwise, most of the technology problems are solved for. However, it is uh, it is also the mindset of the internal customer of the organization, which is a big factor in success of any implementation. What I mean to say is essentially, if the technology team develops any products or services, if the business team is not involved during the course of development, when we actually go for implementation, they will find reasons not to implement because of small issues, right? Which could easily be factored in, which could easily be taken care of. But the important thing is, how do we take along all the stakeholders during the time of development, so that from POC to live, that transition for the business is very seamless, and that will ensure us for a greater adoption by the business and end users in the respective. So that is one course, that is one view that I wanted to put in. Also, POC failure to real life project failure, POC success to real life project failure also depends on some of the organizations do a lot of POC which they intend that might not go through, right? It's just in the tick in the box for them, and they get the press, they get all the all the accolades for it in the press, but when you ask for actual utilization, there's none. So it's also dependent on what was the actual use case of that development that per se that's going to be done. So in my view, I think POC to real life, we should not face a challenge if we're able to sort out primarily issues on the people side, and technology side can be sorted. There's no rocket science there anymore. It used to be at some point of time, but not anymore.
In fact, that is one of the areas where DevOps works very well in this organization, because it is the overall environmental creation for making it goes seamless and smooth. But along with that, Sandeep, if I may ask you, how long does a general process take from POC to actual scalability? I mean, or implementation or creation of the product?
It will all depend upon the complexity of the project that we are handling. I mean, there's no one skill set that we will go live in 1 month, etc. Right? It also depends on the methodology where you are adopting a waterfall or agile methodology. In agile, you start modular development, you start getting incremental deliveries, and you start testing in the real life market. Right? So the time taken for actually going live will be dependent on multiple factors, uh, complexity, type of development required, the number of stakeholders required, etc., etc. So I think it's a factor of multiple things like this, but I won't be able to give you a generic. But for example, somebody would say that I would have launched the mobile app in say 15 days. Somebody would say I've launched a mobile app in 3 months. I mean, is it fair to compare both of them? I don't know, because the complexity of the apps and the functionalities might be different. So I don't think I'll be able to compare that or give you a number around that.
One size will not fit all.
Yes.
Great. Let me just go to Arjun, because he is developing an exciting product, and that too from the scratch, and that too a product which no one has developed, which is a combination of insurance, of banking, and of fintech, everything put together, or lending tech put together. So, Arjun, from your perspective, how easy or difficult it is, especially when you are doing such a Herculean task of developing something which no one has done it, and what time frames you generally look at, especially during this? What are the key difficulties you face?
Yeah, so thanks, Babu. And building on the insights from the other panelists, see, the biggest challenge that I face is, crystallizing of the requirements. And it also emanates from the fact that, insurance in general, insurance is a product, but it sits on other underlying industries, healthcare, marine. Each has got its own underlying complexity. Okay? And health itself, it's a multidimensional animal. You have to understand if you have to do a risk pricing of the health of an individual, there are so many aspects to go into that. And as you mentioned, we are trying to stitch together, lending, insurance, and health tech. So it makes it more innovative, more complex. And when we are trying to do this, there is a challenge. The team that works on crystallizing the requirements also comes from different backgrounds, and they have limited view. They don't have a view of the whole integrated one. So putting together the requirements and shaping it. And another difficulty is, if you try to take a mobile first approach, then even before you see whether it works or not, it takes a long time before you get a stable version. And then, there is a pushback from regulation or stakeholders or partners. So we expend a lot of time, effort in crystallizing the whole thing, and when you're trying to do something innovative, it becomes even more Herculean and uphill. And the other two aspects is insurance is all about headcount. So you can't do a small, 100, 200 kind of POC. And in health is a full product, where if the product is good, you need to be ready to handle, probably 1 million also very quickly. So you are up against volumes, and the December to March is the peak period for insurance. So time factor is also a thing. So there are multiple challenges, and we try to do. Sometimes it's more a jugaad also.
Wonderful. So that
big area, Mr. Nair, big area is also co-creation. So while we may not be specialist in developing the products ourselves in-house, we partner with various people who have been mastering this thing. So there's an element of co-creation which there is a lot of back and forth in terms of ideas, and we are evolving. So we are working in that space. Example like voice, developing voice AI, and so on and so forth. So that is also an element to the success of the project.
Absolutely. And from what I understand a little bit from what Arjun says is that if you are working with diverse team, it is like blind man and the elephant. For some, it is the leg of the elephant. Some, it is the tail is the elephant. For some, it is the tusk. So how do you stitch all those things together? So that is also an important part. While I would like to come back on technology part of it and how technology can be used to integrate it and things like that, Prashant, I want to come with that question to you. But before that, I wanted to also ask each one of you, or at least start off. Typically, when you face all these elements that consume too much of time in these processes, okay, how are you working around and making it intelligent enough so that you can actually reduce the time taken to basically put it into action, from ideas to innovation to action? What is the kind of intelligence that has been used in this entire process?
So when it comes to ideation, it's important to have a cross-functional team. A cross-functional team, people who handle the ground in terms of customer service, people who are from the back office operations, technology. So it's important to have a cross-functional team so that people have an end-to-end customer view. And we used to prepare, at least in my experience, we used to prepare something like a streamline diagram of the actual customer journey from initiation to completion of the life cycle. From a process perspective is one part. Second thing is system perspective. When you merge these two things from a process perspective, is this process really required? This is my current process. Do I really require this process? Maybe a decade back, the current process may be relevant. So automation is not about, as I told you earlier, it's not about connecting the current way of working. It is all about process re-engineering. When we talk about customer point of view, why automation? Can I get an instant customer service? A request placed by a customer or a contactless customer service. The request which is placed in any of the digital channel, can it be online? Why it is not online? The reason is there are multiple systems which are involved. So there is handshake of multiple applications. It goes from one system to another system. So people have to have multiple data login, multiple application, repeated data entry, dual application login. So this creates a friction in the entire journey, whether it comes from a customer service point of view or for the back office operations. If we need to solve this problem, people need to understand, write down the process steps in a drawing board from initiation till completion of the life cycle, process, and the systemic journey. That will help you to identify the bottlenecks. And there are various tools like process mining tools, task mining tools. These all are possible, but tools are only for you to, maybe to some extent. The brainstorming discussion, the cross-functional team to identify this is the best way of identifying.
Interesting. So you need both the tools as well as the people, or the resources to put together the things to make it happen. Any other perspective from any of the financial services folks before we go to the technology folks?
Yeah, one point I wanted to, so like Balaji said, while the cross-functional team is very important, blending it together, we need a disciplined approach. And even though without stifling innovation, you need to bring some kind of process maturity into the product development also, which is what we are striving to do.
Interesting. So discipline, some timelines, some things have to.
So, otherwise, things go in different directions, and people pull in different. So you miss the time or efficacy.
So just to add to what Arjun said, essentially, for any big transformation to work, one is the two elements to it. One is obviously the team is important. What happens at times is what Arjun probably hinted at as well, is that when we bring in existing people to one room to define a process, they will never ever go beyond what is expected out of them. They will try to change the existing paper-based process into a digital process, which works at some times, which doesn't work most of the time. So essentially, people should be ready to question. The problem is the stakeholders which are there in the room do not have authority to question the existing process. That is the problem that this team faces. Now, essentially, to overcome all this, the most important, in my view, is essentially the project. If it's such an organization critical project, should have a top management, buy-in, as well as a very well-defined review with the top management to understand what's happening within the project. Now, essentially, for example, if you have to question a process which has been there for 15, 20 years, I don't think so people in the project team can question it, because end of the day, the business is saying, will say, no, I need this because this is how the business is done. You don't teach me how business is to be done. Somebody overriding that aspect as well needs to be a part of the whole planning process for the project to succeed. So that's very critical in my view, in the whole planning process.
Interesting. In fact, whenever I have been talking to the business process reengineering teams or to the innovations team, at least those innovation teams have been given the teeth to question the processes and try to say how you can leapfrog or do something different wherever it has been. And probably slowly that culture is to an extent changing. But of course, you can't shake, a building that has been built over all these years. So you need to really work around it.
Yeah, so what happens is when we transform a process, we only transform a bit of it, not the whole end of it. So, for example, I would not name anybody, but if you, for example, go for any application to uh, any home finance company here, while you can submit every application online, for the whole processing per se, it still is physical, right? And that has been there for ages now. We have not been able to question that as an industry. So I'm saying things like that continue to be there while some part of it gets innovated. The end-to-end journey still is a long way to go.
Interesting. So, Prashant, you have listened to all these issues, concerns, and the workarounds that the technology that the financial services sector is doing. So, one of the most important thing is people, and people, which anyways is there, and that is where DevOps and things have a role to play. On the other side is the technology scalability, the technology availability, the technology mapping kind of stuff to be done. So how do you think can organization work intelligently along these problems to make sure that you reduce the turnaround time?
Yeah. So yes, thanks to all the dignitaries that the inputs what have come, and I'll be echoing your inputs, no doubt in that. Experienced while working with the banking customers. One more perspective I would like to bring in, which is already the banking customers which are facing, is that uh, conceptualization to innovation, from innovation to reality, going into the production, what is there. So we have brought in Agile, we brought in the DevOps, we brought in DevSecOps and everything. But then when we talk about true digital transformation, which we call as 360-degree DevSecOps, one of the most important factors I would like to bring in, which you people would also agree, is that, your business objectives, your concepts, your realities, everything is embedded into that application, and that application is running on an infrastructure. Now, when this application runs on the infrastructure, this infrastructure is quite a complex and a big infrastructure. So in most of the cases, what we have seen in the banking, in the telecom, and all those industries, what is there, that the reality is ready, but this reality has to get deployed in the production environment. And this reality has to get deployed in such a way that, a couple of dignitaries, they were speaking about that, today I might have 10 people logging in, tomorrow I might have 10,000, day after I might have 1 lakh logins, 1 million logins, and all those things. How do I intelligently auto scale up my infrastructure? How do I provision automatically my infrastructure, what is there? So for example, today, if the development team tells me that, my innovation is ready and it is ready to go to the business, what is there, to take it to the business level in the production environment, okay, there is definitely a big amount of time which has been spent to really see that, we are provisioning the infrastructure to make the reality run in the production for the end user or the customer, what is there. And this time is phenomenal. Okay. So now what we have seen is that, there is a demand which has been coming in, which is leading to innovations. And this demand is what, that my application is ready. Can you provision an X infrastructure within a couple of minutes and couple of hours, which once upon a time used to take a couple of days? Okay. So my application is ready, my reality is ready, and I want to provision it. Traditionally, to take 40 days, 45 days, 50 days to put it into the production so it goes and runs for the business, what is there. Now, this particular time frame can be really intelligently reduced by bringing in some extreme automation. Yes, this extreme automation can be brought in today, okay? And something which used to take weeks that can be done within 2 to 3 hours what is there. So what are we doing is that, we are bringing in another perspective into the digital transformation space where we have been speaking about DevSecOps, but then DevSecOps is not going to be complete until you don't automate the infrastructure provisioning part where extreme automation is done. And a project manager, the project manager is the wrong term what I'm using. The persona is the application owner. The application owner confidently goes and tells the business that, hey, within the next 4 hours, the application is capable to run for the business what is there. Whereas once upon a time is to take 7 to 8 weeks to provision the application onto the provisional infrastructure what is there. So this is one more perspective in the area of extreme automation what is there, that the infrastructure provisioning can now be done in minutes and hours instead of going on for weeks or months what is there.
One small question, Prashant, in this.
Yeah.
Today is a world of cloud, and there are cloud native applications, cloud native technologies, and all things there. So the kind of time taken which you are speaking about, is it for on-prem kind of stuff, or is it also applicable for the cloud?
Okay, great, Babu. Thanks for that question. So when you talk about on-prem, still a lot of banks are still on on-prem due to certain compliance and regulations. And I would never say that there would be 100% transformation to the cloud. Okay, so there is a hybrid mode what has been applied. Now, when we come down to the next part, even when you go on cloud, okay, or you're on on-prem, going and doing a vanilla provisioning is definitely possible by many of the folks today. But once you do the provisioning, how do you really go and do an automated provisioning of the middleware? How do you go and do the automated provisioning of the business application, which is coming in the form of MVPs? What Sandeep Ranjan was speaking, that today we are taking sprints and every sprint is delivering a workable product and it is going to come out in phases and phases and phases what is there. So the solution what is innovated, it is not doing provisioning at the platform. It is not doing provisioning at the infrastructure level. We are doing provisioning infrastructure plus middleware plus the business application what is there. And now this is already working on-prem. It is even working on cloud also. So what are we doing today is that getting a virtual machine provision. Sorry, I'm bringing in technological terms here. Getting a virtual machine provisioned is a 5 minutes job. But once you get the machine provisioned, what about the middleware? What about the business application? What about the compliances and regulation? Now, compliance and regulations are also working as code now. Okay, because every week or every fortnight, what is happening? Even the compliances are rapidly changing. Even the regulations are rapidly changing. And these regulations and compliances are not only for the banking business or the banking customer. These regulations are there for IT also. So how does IT really automate compliance and security as a code? That is the possible way now through extreme automation, that provisioning by taking care of everything. And finally, what Balaji said, I would echo that. Finally, everything boils down to the user experience. User experience is very important. So after doing all this automation, extreme automation and everything, can I give my customer a wow experience? Okay. Can I increase my performance what was there before? Yes, this is now possible in the area of infrastructure. So application is definitely there, but then this application runs on an important backbone. And if this backbone is not automated, if this backbone is not scalable, if this backbone is really not intelligent, okay, the business application being intelligent will not really work out. So we can do it on all the levels now. We are able to do it on all the levels. Okay, so you can say it is more than what cloud is offering today.
Interesting.
So of late, we've seen that we are a highly compliant organization so far as when we hold the compliance and information security as very secret. And we like to believe that we are a very highly compliant organization. Of late, we have seen that we are getting approvals for cloud-based projects because they in turn comply with the regulator guidelines. In our case, the regulator is largely SEBI, and especially the cybersecurity and related guidelines. So over time, over projects, what we have done is that we have shared these guidelines beforehand. If I were to meet Mr. Prashant, just in case for a project, I would point out to these guidelines first, and ask them for their compliance on these guidelines, and then look forward to do a project. So that's from my side of table, insofar as the view for the project.
Interesting. One thing I wanted to understand from a compliance perspective. Now, when we are automating things, when we are, creating automation of process, automation of resource gathering, etc., etc. When you do all these things, how are we actually ensuring that the compliance hardening or the hardening of security or the technology hardening as well as the rules hardening are done simultaneously? Okay, because ultimately anything that has to be built grounds up, and it cannot be that something is built and then you put patches upon it. It will not work that way. So from a banker's perspective, I think Balaji, you have been doing a lot of interesting work. How have you been building it grounds up or trying to create it as it goes along the process?
So fundamentally, any application which is going to production, it's a mandate to have certain application security vulnerability assessment, which is mandate as a process. So there are a lot of tools which in the market, and we do have this kind of like source code thing using Burp tool, and there are multiple things. You don't have option, but this is not no more a choice. It's part of, I would say, it's part of the development life cycle as such. And also application, the developers getting acquainted with the application vulnerability patterns, starting from like for example, someone mentioned about the IT infrastructure part. Automation starts from the hardening infrastructure part, and IT for IT projects. Automation is not only from the customer service point of view, but how the complete infrastructure automation process, how the different user groups are able to seamlessly act upon the multiple works. And in each of these areas, application vulnerability, hardenings, rules, OS upgrade, DB upgrade, ensuring that all the hardware, software versions are latest versions. Because most of the OEM partners, when it comes to database OS, there's a support of certain versions. So it's important for any organization to make sure that they're on the latest hardware versions. And as a process, as a part of IT compliance, to ensure that before the end time happens, because there's a sufficient lead time that is required for each of these activities. So how do we make sure that there's a clear IT strategy, IT compliance, which is being tracked on a regular frequency, and ensure that 100% compliance for each of these activities.
Great. Interesting.
One more thing I want to cover is there are a lot of low-code automation. Developers' dependency, it's very difficult to find good skill set in the market. Low-code automation is extremely important to avoid the dependency. For example, when it comes to low-code automation, whether it's RPA or it is in cognitive capabilities, the developer dependency is being removed. For example, a configuration is supposed to be in a specific parameter configuration. If it is hard-coded, it becomes a challenge. Even certain silly things like this kind of configuration things may put you into a trouble. For example, when you do automation, when you switch over to DR, if your URL is not in a configurable center system, in a DR, people will struggle. You can't do a deployment at that time. Just a simple example. So BCP scenarios are has to be thought from the initial application stage and not after going to production.
Interesting. In fact, do you think there is a lot of benefit of low code when you have this kind of?
Absolutely. When it comes to cognitive capabilities, especially, for example, and intelligent RPA, for example, earlier we used to have in the market, there was only pure RPA, which was just connecting systems. Now in the market, there are a lot of global leading intelligent RPA, which is low code automation, centralized deployment, no more dependence on PC deployments, centralized monitoring, coming with the MIS reports, so that at any point of time, people with the URL can monitor what are the bots which are running in production, what are the numbers, at what stages are they, how do we take corrective action. Similarly, when it comes to cognitive capabilities, instead of doing the coding, people come with the admin. There are a lot of OEM products which comes with the admin tool, where a business user can define the training model. Like, for example, training the NLP, training the intent. These all are business use case users can configure it. You don't need a technology guy.
Interesting. Sandeep, any other perspective from your side?
On the compliance side, I think compliance coming from HFC and HFC, NBFC, etc., closely monitored by RBI. I don't think so. Compliance is an option here. We have to comply with all the guidelines, etc., that is prevalent. So, as what Balaji was saying, before any launches that we go through, we do all these audits, ISMS audits, etc., to ensure that whatever product that we deploy is as per the standards and there's no vulnerability open, at least not any major or high vulnerability open on those applications and services. So that is something that we take very, very strictly. So yeah, that's about it, I think, on the compliance side.
Arjun, do you have any other perspective as a fintech part of it to share in this?
Yeah, certainly. Like what Prashant said, infrastructure provisioning is a critical factor for us from another point. Certain services you cannot launch without getting the certain certification. And for that, apart from my application audits, I need to get the infrastructure audited also before I even launch it. Okay? So it's a chicken and egg kind of situation. You have to provide for the infrastructure before you launch it. So that extending Sachin's point on that. And the other one is compliance. So in our case, compliance with regard to multiple regulatory authorities, because there is an RBI related compliance, there's an IRDA insurance related compliance, and healthcare, you have privacy, HIPAA, GDPR. Even though they are not made statutory by law, there is a general market requirement. So stitching together the various compliance regimes into the delivery model becomes another one. And the third one is Sandeep Saran mentioned earlier about co-creating with others. That's a very good thing, but you are using APIs and they are all become a source of security also for you. And how can you be sure about the API security when you're working with diverse partners? So we have to crack that problem.
I think you have been a security professional too, so you will definitely look at first from that angle of security. Wonderful, wonderful. So, gentlemen, one more very interesting thing that comes to my mind is that at the end of the day, innovation is something which is never 100% perfect. Okay, you innovate something, you learn from it, you fail, then you work on your failure, and then you put that failure, the reworked kind of thing, and then you succeed. So genuinely there are some tweaks here and there, even in spite of going through best of the quality checks, scalability test, robustness test, and all that. So how easy or difficult is to work on these tweaks for organization, and how do you provision for these tweaks when you have these innovations put into a real-time production or things like that? Any thoughts anybody wants to share?
So especially the amount of complexity is there more for cognitive capabilities. A regular application, I think everybody is doing it right now. We are looking at all of us in the market globally. People are looking at providing virtual assistants. So all the cognitive capabilities, it's important to work at automation pattern-wise, looking on some POCs, getting some proof of concepts, looking at the reality, getting the learnings from that particular pattern automation, and then look at mass volume. You can't obviously, when you do experiment, you can't look at mass volume. And anything you start with the low risk use case, so that there's no customer impact. The risk is more of internal to the bank. Make sure that something within the bank, internal users are convinced with that. Ensure that the accuracy is good, explainability, availability, scalability part, all these things are being taken care, and then roll it out to the customer as such. Another thing is on how do we make sure that you assess the system at each stage during the development. It's important to have a demo of this particular working version model in the development instance rather than one final stage giving it to a delivery. If you develop a UI, how do you make sure that this is being vetted with the respective stakeholders? Is there any change in the user experience point of view, minimal click, minimal data entry? And subsequently, when it comes to this multiple life cycle, how do you make sure that at each stage it is being validated so that the surprises, the impact analysis, the number of interfaces, number of applications impact, these all the design impact analysis is another important thing so that the surprises coming up later are being avoided.
Interesting.
I'd say that more you work with the end user, the better the output. The more you see from their eyes and when step into their shoes, the better the output.
That's why the frequent validation exercise when you build getting the demos of the system at respective stages, at every logical unit, even before it has been delivered to the UAT, it makes sense to quickly correct and move on.
Yeah, just to add to what Balaji and Sandeep Saran said. So I've been in this the finance industry, working on innovative products for pretty long now. And what you asked was a typical what we can term as the innovator's dilemma, right? In the sense that when we do innovation, should we do innovation or should we just follow? That's the one basic first question that we need to ask, because any innovation can give today's time, it can give you only 4 months advantage, not more than that, because anything can be copied, right? Second is as an innovators, we should be ready for failures as well, because when you try innovating 10 different stuff, all 10 might not succeed, but when we try 10 things, 2 might succeed and become a big innovation for the future. So from that perspective, I think failures, we should take that into learning as to when we do the future products and we design future products, how can we bring that learning into the new product? That is the more key element here. I'll just give you an example, right? So in my whole career till now, I think I would have launched at least 5 customer facing apps, and removed as well at least 3 of them, right? But the fact is, that's a learning curve where we all need to take and move on, because that the learning that you get from innovating and doing new things will help help you to design new products in future and create that mindset in the company as well to innovate. If we don't innovate for the fear of failure, we will never grow
Interesting.
as an organization. So I think that is the mindset that we have in terms of growth perspective.
Great. Thanks, Sandeep, for that input. Arjun, you were wanting.
Yeah, I have a point. See, what I want to tell is for a market leading player, the choice of whether to innovate or not is there. But if you are an incumbent, I mean, you are a new entrant into the business, then you have to break into the big boys club, and innovation is not a choice. That's first point. Okay, so the mindset will be different. Second one is, in other cases, whether securities or banking, it's a relationship between the provider and the customer. It's a direct one. But we have another layer of the complexity, because you're dealing with a hospital or a garage or some other third-party player also in the game. So it becomes a triangle, and so the customer experience, you need to anticipate their behaviors also. And transformation, industry structures, there are a lot of conflict of interest. When new things come up, the other partners behave in a particular way, they will resist very subtly. So how do you handle them and navigate those challenges or anticipate them in the beginning becomes critical to the success of your POC or the next one, or it may fail for those reasons also. So it's not just customer behavior alone.
Interesting. That's a very good perspective, because ultimately you are working in different environment, especially in businesses like yours, which is integrating with 3 or 4 different segments, be it finance, be it insurance, be it healthcare, and each one of them are heavily regulated.
I mean, just look at telemedicine or e-pharmacy. Now you can come up with all this, but finally, will the customer adoption and the medicine get delivered? Or the doctors will cooperate in telemedicine? You don't know this. There are so many unknowns in this. So, and you can't do this by getting them into a room and doing it. You have to go to the market and make it work.
Interesting. And how can you build in checks and balances to ensure that you catch it at the right time? Okay, Balaji always said one very interesting point, that you keep doing it consistently and not wait for the D-Day to actually discover any problem. So that is one part of it. Any other interesting checks and balances that you have tried?
In IT companies, I've been in the IT companies for 17 years. Especially when you're in a product company, you used to have certain PQM metrics. For example, the requirements issue should not get into the design stage. The design issue should not get into the development stage. So you have certain metrics So when you used to work in Infosys, you used to have an internal metric saying that for so much function point size of project, there's a guideline says how do you assess the situation at every stage. Apart from that, what is a specific outcome of the project? For looking at the outcome of the project, am I meeting the solution? Is my solution achieving my outcome? I think that question should happen as part of each of the stages. And am I doing what is right? Rather than something available just easy for me.
Interesting. So being on both the sides of the desk helps as a technology vendor and as a technology user. So both the things will definitely give you a different overall perspective too. Prashant, any interesting thoughts from your side on this?
Like, I would echo what Balaji said that, yes, this checks and balances would be definitely required. And now AI contributing a lot, artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, contributing a lot. So yes, these are happening at every stage, what is there. And coming back to the core topic, what I was talking before some time, it is across the life cycle. And in this life cycle, we have been doing, we are doing this in the area of provisioning also at each and every level, what is that? Because if the checks and balances are not there, we'll not be able to understand where we are actually leading towards. And that is, you can say it is a mandatory area. If it is not there, then let the solution not be there, but that definitely has to be there. And it is there.
So how are you building challenges, especially when you are having your, this enterprise resource provisioning done? How do you do this?
So here, what are we doing is that, we have a concept called as templatization. Okay. So, we have several pre-built configurations. We have several pre-built templates. What are there? That is one part. What is there? So you can say it is a proactive way of managing something. But at the same point of time, as Balaji and Sandeep and these people referred, that the system should now be capable of learning itself. Okay. So what happens is that, the templatization, the predefined configurations, everything is one part of the system, what is there. On the other hand, as the systems are progressing, okay, they falter, they fail, there are incidents, what are there. And there are a lot of learnings by the AIs and MLs through this particular incidents, what are there. And then the templates keep on changing, or the templates keep on getting upgraded, what are there. And this is the way, what we do is that, we are minimizing the human interaction in the system. And we are trying to make the system more and more intelligent to understand and adjust the environment as per the progress, what is going on. So that is the major part, what is there. So 60-70% is the predefined configurations. 30-40% would be more of AI, ML getting into the system. And the learning, what happens, it helps in auto scaling. It helps in auto load balancing and everything, what is there.
Interesting. So basically the process automation on one side and the AI on the other side is also adding up more teeth into the entire process. Correct me if I am wrong, if I am.
Yes, that's perfectly right, Babu. And the interesting part is this could be seen only in the area of cloud, but now people can take up this advantage for on-premises also. So we started with on-prem. Okay, we have extended ourselves to cloud, but many people wanted some cloud features to come on-prem, and we have these features on-prem also now.
Interesting.
Add a point to what Prashant said. See, Prashant has emphasized the technology support to achieve these objectives. But I would go one step to say that the people and the process layer also have to be what is supplemented. You need at the people layer, a better work culture towards, learning from past, analyzing and putting them in. But that doesn't come automatically through technology. So it requires a organizational mindset culture.
Yes.
And that will be brought in through management frameworks, and you need
management
to do it with total commitment and letter and spirit, then only you will be able to get the best advantage of the technology.
Yes, perfect, Arjun. What you said is clear. People, process, products, and partners. Until this four don't come together, the things will definitely move ahead. Yes, Arjun. Yes.
Fantastic. So that brings me to the last, question of this entire discussion. What is the yardstick to measure that most of you have been using? How successfully is it deployed, or how what are the parameters with which you can measure the efficiency of deployment of this innovation, so that organization work around these and put yardstick to determine the success factors of this plan. How do you work around this?
Yeah. In our case, we essentially break a project into phases. We go by the 10-15% kind of rule, in the sense that deliver 10%, create a buy-in, then look at next phase. So that way you at least convince all the stakeholders to back you up to deliver the next phase. It's a simple thing, but I thought I'll put it across the table.
Absolutely. Very, very, very important, Sandeep.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so value realization is extremely important. There's no fancy ticket. Anything you do, it's important to know what is the value realization. What problem are we trying to solve? Is it a customer's throughput time? Is it an instant service? Is it a back office operation scrutiny which you're trying to eliminate the manual eyeballing? Right? There are multiple things. So fundamentally, is it the metrics which are something like throughput time reduction? What is the TAT reduction? And something you automate, especially when you do the automation with the tools and RPA and the various automations, the consistency of getting the throughput time, irrespective of surge in the volume, especially in the quarter end, first week of the month, any bank will have a huge volume, right? So there are certain season-oriented huge volumes which comes up. How do I get consistent throughput time? Manpower saving, cost saving, and number of process steps. If there were some 10 process steps, am I eliminating the number of process steps? Is customer able to do with minimal clicks, minimal data entry, and how the customer journey has been frictionless?
Interesting.
Just to add to what Balaji said, I think the success of the project can be monitored depending on the type of the project. So you can, for some projects, you could have active users, transactions, number of transactions as a success parameter. Some projects might have TAT, cost reduction, etc., as a parameter of success. But for most of the customer-facing applications that is there in the market, you also have additional parameters in terms of App Store ratings, for example, is one of them. CSAT score can be one of them. You could also have negative chatter, positive chatter on the social media that could be monitored as a success parameter. So there are multiple things evolving in the new world, but it all depends on the project type and the deliveries that is intended for the project.
And the ultimate decisive factor is basically the customer. If he is happy with it.
It has to impact the customer, right? We all working
no downtime, obviously, yes. There cannot be a downtime. That's a hygiene factor.
Yes, yes.
So everything revolves around the customer. Absolutely. And Prashant, from your side, technologically, any interesting success factors or any interesting yardsticks that you have been looking at?
So, probably nothing different than what Sandeep Ranjan said or Sandeep Saran said or Balaji said. The yardsticks are same, but whatever you do should be measurable. You should have proper metrics for that. And when I come down to this particular innovation, what we have done for one of the banks, looking at the banking perspective, for them the success factor is how much cost or revenues they are saving every year. That is a yardstick what they have, and that yardstick is used to measure our solution. That has the innovation really given you that ROI what it has been expected? Because this innovation might not be customer facing, but it is innovation which is very much required for the application which are facing the customers. What are they? So for us, it is a straight yardstick that the bank comes and says that yes, this year we have saved 70 CR, we have saved 80 CR by making use of this solution. You have reduced our TAT from 45 days to 4 hours or 6 hours. Then last year, when our RBI compliance audits were there, we faltered year because we had crossed the number of days what is there. But today we are able to go down to the audit team and say, hey, what you want is here, and this is the report for that. You can come and verify that. So these are some yardsticks what the bank are using to measure the solution what we have delivered or what we have innovated at this point of time.
Wonderful. I think that's a very good encapsulation. In fact, we organize this Technovity Awards and Finovity Awards, which are awards for innovation for the financial services sector, that is Finovity, and Technovity for fintechs. And whenever I have the jury meeting, the first thing that the jury asks about the innovation is, what is the measurability of the success factor that the organization has put? Okay, is it just a fancy kind of app or a fancy kind of watch banking or whatever they have put, or has it actually resulted in customer satisfaction or growing number of customers, reduction in complaints, or whatever measurability? So that measurability is the factor that gives comfort to everyone. And that is probably something that every one of us is looking at so that we can relate to that measure. So
Correct.
interesting.
The one unsaid metric in the success of innovation is how many competitors you spawn. Okay, you don't put it on the table, but that is a looming threat, and it's a validation also. Okay.
Very true. Very true. Yes, Arjun.
But I mean, you take Paytm. After that, you have Phone Pay, Bharat Pay.
Phone Pay,
So
Google
there's
Pay, Google.
so to occupy that. So it's a unsaid metric, I would say.
Interesting. That is also, so you can add one more metric to the overall determining factors.
Yes. 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 Yes.
Thanks. So any last point anyone wants to make before we close this session?
It's just that now December the fintech international financial center in Gujarat is getting more traction. So we are at the cusp of a very big explosion in financial innovation. So probably we need to get our act together and attack on more fronts.
Excellent. Thanks, Arjun, and thank you very much for participation. Have
Thank
a
you.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot,
Thank you for the
everybody. Thank
opportunity,
you.
Mr. Nair.
Thanks
Thank you.
everyone for
Thank you,
the
everyone.
set.